Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Keith Baker of Twogether Studios, as well as the godfather of Eberron, and a bunch of other things like Gloom and countless other board games, card games. So today we're here to talk about Action Cats for starters. You just launched that about a week ago on KickStarter. So Action Cats, how did that come about? You a big cat fan?
Action Cats, actually, it was kind of funny. I am a cat fan. I like cats. But honestly, it was just something that happened on a total whim where we've been talking to some friends online about, crazy cat adventures. And my wife and I were just like brainstorming, like, okay, how would you make a game about that? And so we were talking about like war games, like, kitty wars, and like all sorts of crazy ideas. And I just had this idea of basically, again, just a game where you have pictures of cats and prompts to tell stories about them. And I originally just planned to make it just for friends, just using pictures of friends' cats, just as a sort of, basically a couple years ago, I made a sort of science fiction Gloom that was Star Wars and Star Trek, and I just play it at conventions with people. And that ended up becoming Gloom in Space a couple years later. But for a while, it was just something I just had that I'd play with people. And that was sort of where I was going with this. But then we started playing it with people and took it on Joko Cruise and things like that. And people just had a tremendous amount of fun with it. And we're just like, why not actually make it? It's basically, I love collaborative storytelling. Like, my favorite thing about Gloom is the stories that come out of it. And a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable just telling a story off of nothing. But basically, you look at the picture of the cat and, with the choices we're making, we want pictures where it's like, you look at that cat and you say, that cat's up to something. There's a story there. And the way the game works, it's really simple. You have a deck of cards. You have pictures on the back of them. And then on the front, you have the start of a sentence and the beginning and the end of a sentence. And so basically, someone picks the cat. They name the cat, which gives you a sense of where the judge is at. This cat is named Darth Vader. And then everyone else combines two of their cards together to form a story. Now, on its base level, this is sort of Cards Against Humanity. You'll have the story, this cat is a famous game designer and he'd like some appreciation for that. And you can just let that combo go just as it is, which is the way Gloom works. You can just say, not Gloom, cards works. The cards are the answer. But what we encourage people is to build on that and say, well, what games has this cat designed? Why is he unappreciated? Tell a little bit of the story there. Darth Vader, was working on a Star Wars minis game, and then X-Wing came out and totally stole his thunder. And to me, as I said, that's what I enjoy about it is you can have the same combination of cards in 3 different games and have 3 completely different stories because of where people decide to go with it. So it's very much as sort of, imaginative as you want it to be. And certainly compared to something like cards, it's definitely family friendly. Kids like talking about cats. So.
Who doesn't like talking about cats? I feel like even people that don't like cats like to talk about cats.
Well, that's the point to me is you don't have to like cats, frankly, because I'm just going to show you a picture of a cat and you can tell me a story and you can be like, that cat is the worst person in the world and he is going to kill you all, and there's your story. So certainly now it is the case that anybody who backs the game can submit pictures of their cats to be in the game. So there's a chance, as I said, to get your own cat in the action.
So have submissions for cats started yet, or are you getting submissions before you ask for them?
Oh, no. I mean, you have to back the game. Well, and this all started because when I was first just putting it together, I went on Facebook and just said, hey, I'm working on a silly game project. anyone who feels like it, share a picture of your cat. I got 350 responses, and I was like, okay, people like cats. And so, you know, we've got, yeah, definitely a couple hundred so far. We have more than we can use for sure. But, you know, the point is we don't just want completely random pictures of cats. We really want to pick ones that we feel like, okay, this is an inspiring, you know, I want to tell a story about that cat.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So you guys are going to put together a cat committee?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we're gonna have a, you know, that's gonna be the hardest part of this design, frankly, is the week. You know, our goal is to have this off to the printer by August 12th. So the week after the Kickstarter ends, we're just gonna be staring at cats all day. But we have a 9-point, you know, a 9-step process for evaluating cat pictures we've put together.
That's a pretty thorough process. What is the 9 steps to picking the perfect cat?
Okay, well, the 9 steps to picking the perfect cat is, first, is the cat perfect? And yes, of course it is. Everybody's going to be, you know, people submitting cats. They wouldn't submit it if it wasn't perfect. We know your cat is perfect. Great. Is it, step 2 is portrait. Is it in portrait format? Because it's going to be on the back of a card and we need it oriented that way. Step 3 is production quality. You know, is it blurry? Is the lighting poor? Again, we've only got 160 cards here. We need to make sure they're decent quality. You have pose. Is it a funny pose? Is it an action shot? You have poise. Is it, you know, does the cat have character? Does it have the fuzz factor, we'll say? We have props and property, location, costumes. You know, is there something beyond the cat that really makes the picture? And then we have plot potential. Is it, you know, again, do I just look at this and say there's a story there, which is really a combination of pose, poise, and props. And then finally we have, does it make us purr? And then the 9th step is private, and I can't tell you about that one.
The proprietary cat selection process. Perfect.
Exactly. So, you know, poise, pose, props.
You guys are like, you guys are about 75% of the way there. So it's looking good.
And it's definitely, compared to games like Illimat or Phoenix, you know, which are both very complicated, very big. You know, part of the point of us doing this is it's just fun. It's small. The game will be in people's hands by the holidays. You know, again, we're printing domestically. We're going to go to print within a month of the Kickstarter. So it's just sort of a quick, let's do this and get it out there.
Do you guys actually have your own cats?
I do. I have 2 cats. They are currently in my demo copy of the game. We'll see if they make it. I mean, I'm not going to give my cats any special treatment here. You know, they got to go through the process. But I have 2 cats and a pug, and they're all quite adorable. And I'm going to see real quick. I have my iPad here. If I happen to have a picture on my iPad.
They're saying, show us the cats.
Yeah. I'm working on it here. I would be surprised if I don't have a picture on the iPad, but apparently I have a lot of pictures of New Zealand.
Nice.
So here's one, because this is actually from when we were doing Phoenix. Now that's just he's not looking at the camera.
So while you're looking for that, someone had asked, maybe, you know, some people are just coming in. So Action Cats is essentially, you know, think Cards Against Humanity, but with cats, and you can play it with your kids. And it's a little more in depth.
It's exactly like that. I mean, again, the twist on it is it does encourage storytelling. So the main point is that Cards Against Humanity, the cards alone are the answer. You combine the cards and it's, you know, whereas with Action Cats, the cards can be the answer, but like Gloom, we encourage people to use that as a base for storytelling and expand on the answer. So if the answer is this cat is an infamous pirate and personally sunk the Edmund Fitzgerald, you can let that stand on its own, but we want to know, how did this cat get to be a pirate? What's their pirate name? You know, tell us more about this story. Okay, that's them right there. So that's Haggis and Faye.
Haggis and Faye. I like those names. Solid.
So there they are. But and they are pretty adorable. They're brother and sister. But like I said, to me, what I really like about it is, again, so as I said, first off, every card is essentially the equivalent of 3 cards in Cards Against Humanity, because the back of the card is a picture of the cat, and that's what you're judging. So that's as if that was a black card. And then the front has the start of a sentence and the end of a sentence, and you sort of combine them together. So there's a lot of density in it. And then, as I said, because we really encourage you to tell stories, and often what happens is I'll start with mine. So I'm going to say this cat is a master criminal and is known as the kingpin of catnip or something like that. And then when it gets to the next person, they may play off of that. And they say, well, he is indeed a master criminal, but what you don't know is blah, 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 blah. And so, again, like I said, it's like Gloom, of that you have the basic rules of the game, but then you can, the experience, a lot of what drives it is the stories that people come up with on their own, which further is good for kids, because kids love making up stories about cats, I will tell you.
Or anything for that matter. So how do you win?
So you win, again, basically, it's the standard sort of formula of something like Apples to Apples, Cards Against Humanity, you know, an answering questions game is the start of each round, someone is the judge, they take the top cat from the deck, and they have to name the cat. And that's, you know, first bit of creativity is look at that cat, tell me what his name is. And then everyone pitches their story. The judge picks one of them and they get the cat. And so you continue for 6 rounds, and, you know, whoever ends up with the most cats wins. Now, to me, it is very much like most of those games. You know, it is, yes, someone will be the winner, but really the fun of it is the stories people come up with. You know, it's sort of, it's not a game that you're going to walk away from having lost, being like, ah, damn it, that was a waste of half an hour. You know, I mean, it's all about people just laughing and having fun.
And and essentially it's collaborative. The judge gets to play as well, where in Apples to Apples, all they do is pick. You're saying they start, they get to name the cat and kind of kick it off, and then they pick the story they like the best.
Right, and that's what I really like is the naming the cat really does help sort of set the tune. And actually, hang on for just a second, because I should grab a copy. I don't know why I didn't have one in my hand, so hang on.
Okay.
Be right back.
And now, chat, you've been asking what is behind Keith, and you can see what was behind him. So if it's a secret, it is now out on the internet.
All right.
I suspect it is not.
Now, bear in mind, of course, this is only a prototype. Okay, there we go. But... oh, goodness, I was going to say it was only a prototype, but this is a very weird prototype. All right. So the point is, you have a card, and the card has, you know, a cat on the back. And then, for some reason, again, this is only partial deck. But, you know, so you have your cat on the back. Whoa. The guy upside down. He's just hard to see. Gray cat against gray. And then on the other side, you have the start of a sentence and the end of a sentence. And so, so again, you put 2 cards together and say, this cat is a ninja assassin, and he's our last best hope. And now the point is, again, you can just, you know, if it was Cards Against Humanity, that would be the answer. And but what I'm saying is, with action cats, we want to say, why is he our last best hope? What is he going to do? That cat is on an adventure, and I want you to tell me about it. And you don't have to do that. You can just let the card stand as it is. But I'm just saying, I could see it. He could be a ninja assassin, and he is going to save us all from, you know, from something. And I want to know what it is. Oh, here's one of my favorites. So we call this guy Fuzz Lightyear, but, you know, And I just have to check. Say something so I know my sound is working.
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Since I unplugged my headphones, I wasn't sure if they were still on. So we got all kinds of crazy cats. Now these again are just our prototype cats. So now the whole point is we're getting submissions. So maybe that none of these cats will actually make it. And I'm just saying, this cat's an old soul. At least that's what he tells people. But so certainly anyone who's played Gloom has a sense of what my sense of humor is like. But at the same time, a lot of this will depend as we get new cats. We're going to be inspired by those cats. So we'll see how that goes.
So one of the things the chat has been asking about is what is behind you, which we got a peek of it when you got up.
Oh, yeah. So that is Illimat is the card game I actually kickstarted last year. It's a game I made with the Decemberists. And that is coming out probably in October. And it's sort of a wacky classic card game. This thing here is actually the board for the game. Or at least that's what it looks like. It's on a piece of cloth, but it's a sort of classic card game with a cloth board, and it's got a lot of wacky twists to it. My wife and I are actually going to be going on a road tour starting in mid-August, and we're going to be driving across the country. We have a van again, and we're going to be driving across the country and going to both conventions and game cafes. So we'll be at Dragon Con and we'll be at Gen Con, but along the way, we're going to stop at game cafes all around the country, and we're going to be demoing Illimat and Action Cats and other games.
That sounds like a blast. I will be at Gen Con as well. Are you going to make it to PAX Unplugged?
Yeah. We'll definitely be at PAX Unplugged. And PAX Unplugged, I'll have Illimat because by then it'll be out. So we're looking forward to that. And you were mentioning being on Maison Kana, and I was going to actually be in that game myself, but unfortunately, there's too many. I got a demo that is running at the same time. So
I probably got your spot. They're like, we need somebody now, last minute.
Yeah, it's quite possible. But it's funny. I can also hear the cats upstairs because I'm downstairs and I've shut the door, and they're I think saying, "Let us in. We want to be part of the show." So anyhow, yeah, and there's a lot of things going on. I also have a Scott Pilgrim card game that is going to be coming out around Gen Con. And that's not something that I've made with my own company, Twogether Studios, but it's still a game of mine that's coming out that I've been working on for a couple years. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. So I've kind of seen a theme here with card games.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, they're all quite different. So Scott Pilgrim, I don't know if you're familiar with either the movie or the graphic novels.
I am not, unfortunately.
But anyhow, Scott Pilgrim is a deck building game. And it's a game about basically getting your life together. And the comic and, again, the movie are basically, it's sort of like people talk about magic realism. Scott Pilgrim is essentially video game realism. It's like, what if the world actually worked like a video game? And so the game sort of combines trying to get your life together and, get a job and a relationship with potentially having to beat up giant robots or fight off ninjas. And then Illimat is very much patterned. The Decemberists came to us with this thing and said, could you make a game off of it? And what they wanted was a game, they said, that could feel like this could be 100 years old. You could have found it in your grandfather's attic and been like, what is this? And, and that's what we've done, is it's something that feels very much like a classic card game, but then has this very dynamic twist to it that makes it sort of compelling for a modern audience and not just feel like, oh, you're just playing hearts or something. And then Action Cats is, as I've been saying, very simple, very much like this is just a foundation for telling a story about this cat. And And so there, and you know, on top of that, also, of course, Phoenix on Command, you know, is a role-playing game, but that's also a card game. So cards seem to be my thing right now.
That was kind of what I was going with, the underlying theme of cards.
Yep,
So
no, it's true.
nothing wrong with that. We can never have too many card games. So, do you consider yourself a tabletop gamer or an RPG gamer, or you kind of straddle the world? Like, I enjoy playing tabletop games, absolutely. But if someone asked me, I would probably define myself as an RPG gamer.
So I define myself as a storyteller. And basically, looking through my career, I also spent 12 years working on computer games, mostly MMO games. And to me, the point is what I love is telling stories or creating a platform for collaborative storytelling. So I love role-playing games. And that's a big part of what I do and what I love. But then also games like Gloom, games like Action Cats, what I love about them is they're all encouraging stories in different ways. With a role-playing game, we get a long-term story that we build together. With Action Cats, it's like, here's, you know, we're going to play this game for 15 minutes and we come up with some crazy, you know, how is this cat a ninja and how is he going to save the world? And even with games like Scott Pilgrim, part of what I like about it is a deck builder, but the drive of the game is build a little life for your character. You know, you feel like even there, it's not mechanically part of the game at all, but I always like to say at the end of the game, you should tell the story of like how all your stuff adds up. And apart from that, I've also written 6 novels in Eberron. You know, so I've written novels as well. But like I said, for me, it's all different ways of either creating stories or creating platforms for other people to create stories.
Excellent. We can never have too many storytellers.
Yeah, that's what I feel. And I've actually also, you know, in a bunch of cases, just written like stories for video games and things like that more recently instead of designing the entire game.
Do you have a favorite thing to write for?
I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, I love writing about Eberron, and you know that's still something I do on keithbaker.com. Just because I've been living with the world for 14 years now, and there's so many sort of things I have, sort of stories I'd like to tell that we haven't had a chance to explore. So I love that, but I also love things like Action Cats because it's just so quick and fast and people are always coming up with new things. And I'll go ahead and say, actually, one of my favorite adventures I've written. In 2009, I traveled around the world, did a thing I called Have Dice Will Travel. And I basically traveled around the world, and if people would put me up for 3 nights, one night I would, one day I'd entertain them with D&D, whatever it was they were interested in my stuff. One day I wanted them to entertain me with something I would, wouldn't see in their town if I wasn't there with them. And one day I'd do my own stuff. And I actually ran the same adventure 56 times. And every time it was different. Basically it was a sort of murder mystery, but there were so many. It's a sort of thing if I knew where it would eventually end up, but it was designed so there was a bunch of paths to get there. And it was always interesting to see what would this group come up with? What would their approach be? What clues would they find and what would they make of them? And so the point is, to me as the game master, it was just as interesting. I could run that right now and I'd be interested because I want to see how it goes. And what I love is it's like watching a TV show, except I can watch that same episode, 50 times because I never know, oh, there's something we haven't seen before. And that's the kind of thing I love. And Action Cats is that in a very tiny scale of just, again, every time I play, someone's going to come up with an approach to a ninja cat that I haven't seen before,
Of those 56 times, did anybody just like completely blow you away with something outlandish or something you weren't expecting?
almost every time people would do something that I hadn't seen before. And towards the end, it certainly did get to a sort of, okay, there's one from column B and one from column C. Like I said, it never ran exactly the same twice. But basically, it's a story in which the characters are a group of monsters in Droam who are trying to find a war criminal who's a sort of a wizard who's in the process of doing a ritual to switch his mind to another body. So it's sort of a face-off scenario. And the question is, can they find this guy before he completes the ritual and gets a new body? But the characters are a changeling or a doppelganger, a werewolf, a gnoll, a kobold sorcerer, a goblin rogue, and we're missing one in there. But anyhow, but they're, they're all monsters. And part of the thing is, especially taking the doppelganger, is what's their basic approach? They're coming into the city. They don't know where this guy is. They know what he looks like. How are they going to find him? And part of the thing is like, okay, he's a wizard. He's doing a big ritual. He's going to need components. Let's follow that. Or a bunch of times, like I said, about out of 56, about 4 or 5, I'm his pregnant wife, and I'm looking for him to because dang it, he's got to take care of this kid. A bunch of them went with I'm his relative, or something like that. Have you seen, because a bunch of them are like, oh, I'm just going to come in as him. And just people will tell me what I need to know. Well, I thought you were going to be, in this place. But as I said, it's all these sort of different shape changing is your tool. What's the most efficient way to use that to find a guy? I will say that the third time I ran it, it very much is a sort of murder mystery. It's essentially you're trying to track down this guy's associates. And each time you get to one of them, they've just been killed. And you're trying to put together, okay, well, who killed them? What clues can we get? How can we find them? And I will say that the third time I ran it, 2/3 of the way through the game, the people put the clues together. They said, okay, stop, wait. Clue 1, clue 2, clue 3, it's clearly Colonel Mustard. And the thing is, they were totally wrong. It was Miss Scarlet. But I looked at it and I'm like, but that is a very valid way to interpret those clues. I just myself had not noticed that you could look at that and come to that conclusion. And it was like, I could have pushed them to try and see it my way, but I'm like, no, that's a solid story. I mean, that's a good answer. So I just went and ran with it. And they get to the end and what do you know? It's Colonel Mustard. And they're like, yes, we are detectives. And that's what I love about role-playing. Is the point is, again, it's not that I don't want people to be able to fail. If their detective work had been crappy, I'd have made them, get back to it. But it was simply that I hadn't considered this very reasonable approach to the story. And I love that I could change it so it made sense to them. Because that's the thing. When I write a novel, when I watch a movie, so many times in like watching movies, I'm like, oh, this is what they're doing. And then they don't. And I'm just like, oh, that's stupid. My answer was better. And I love in role-playing games that if that comes up, it can be the movie I wanted it to be. It can be because so many times in a show, I'm like, oh, I have such a better way this should have turned out. And so, like I said, that's what I love about role-playing games is in this case, for that group, this was the right answer, and I could adjust it. Meanwhile,
I was just going to say it took me many years to learn that, and it's the truth. And I find a lot of times I don't even come up with the outcomes anymore. I just listen, and if they come up with one that's really good, then I use that.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I took that into account for the next 53 times I ran the game, and I'm like, okay, it is possible, that this could be seen this way, and adjusted it. And that was the main thing is as it went on, every time someone did something new, well, then next time I'm prepared for that possibility, and I've like developed that NPC, and I've sort of. So the funny thing is, I've never written up this game. Like I couldn't send you this adventure. Because so much of it is just in my head. And just as you said, it's my ability of, I know pretty much anything anyone's going to try and do in this thing, and I'm prepared to handle that. But writing down all those possibilities so that someone who's not prepared to just improvise an encounter in Greywall would just be an enormous amount of work, you know?
No, absolutely. I mean, the D&D campaign I'm running right now, a lot of it is actually being guided by an offhand comment that one of the players made. They had to go to see some hags and barter or trade for something. Yep. And one of them made the offhand comment of going, oh, this is going to be like a fairy tale thing where we're going to have to trade something, you know, ethereal, but
abstract,
really important. And I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely what it is now. Now they have these huge gaps in their memories. So,
yep. No, and it's funny you mentioned that, because the Droam adventure I was just talking about, one of the big things is the best way to find the guy is to go talk to a hag who is basically the primary supplier of magic components. And one of the things she wants is basically one of the character's dreams. And it's, again, as you said, just a sort of fun little abstract, okay, do you feel okay about giving a night hag a direct connection to your dreams? And it's a one-shot. Technically, you don't have to worry about it. But ideally, if it's done right, people still identify with the characters enough that they're still a little creeped out by the concept.
Yeah, and that's even better if it's an ongoing campaign, because then
absolutely.
You know, they feel it.
It's the biggest challenge to me is designing one-shots, because a lot of what I run these days are one-shots because I'm running games at conventions or things like that. I just started a new campaign that I'm running, and that's fun because really, as I said, for the last 3 years, I've either been running Phoenix because I've been putting out Phoenix, and, you know, that takes a ton of playtesting, or I've been doing one-shots. And to me, the best part of role-playing is that story people build up over time as they get to know their characters, as they get to figure out the story. And so it's always an exciting challenge in making a one-shot of how can you get people invested? How can you get them to care about these characters, even though, you know, they've only lived with them for 20 minutes, you know?
So staff writer Doug has a question for, well, actually, website editor Doug. He recently got promoted. The pay still is horrible, but they're all volunteers. He says, it seems like you've got a lot of ideas floating through your head all the time. How do you pick which ones to actually send out into the world and make into a thing?
Well, I mean, it is very much, it's certainly the kind of thing that lends towards me being a game designer, is being full of ideas. And part of it is see what just really inspires me. Like, what is the game that I just can't put out of my head? And second, just to make them and see what happens. So that is exactly the point of Action Cats. Is Action Cats was not something that I initially said, this is our next game. It was just a totally random idea that I'm like, it would not be that difficult to make this, so I'm just going to make it. And I did. And then we started playing it. We had a tremendous amount of fun with it. Certainly what I like about role-playing is that same thing. If it's you know, just sort of a chance to take an idea and run with it. And I've been doing things, you mentioned Maze Arcana, Satine Phoenix, who's, you know, part of running that show, and I've been doing a charity D&D event in LA every year. And part of the point for that is it's always interesting for that, I need a good one-shot that is interesting to watch, and that the people may not know D&D very well because it's like celebrity, you know, actors and folks like that. And so I'm like, you know, I've got to make sure it's accessible. And so it's always fun to sort of just, again, come up with an idea that I'm like, okay, people can connect with this. It's going to be fun, even if they haven't played D&D in 20 years. And so a lot of it is just have those ideas bouncing around, keep notes. You know, I have a notebook that I'm always just writing down ideas in. And, you know, some of them, I have a couple ideas. Literally, I have a game that I started making maybe 5 years ago that I have a prototype of on the shelf that it's like 80% of the way there. And it's like, it's okay, but you know, one of these days I'll have the thing that makes me say, oh, that's what that game needed, that pushes it up to being something worth making. And you just got to run with it and see.
It's in you to make the thing. I guess that's
I do the mark of making. I'm just saying that's the driving mark of making. So there you go.
Excellent. I have a few friends that are budding game designers, and they've had their first few successful Kickstarters. And I'm right now waiting for my copy of Laser Riders, which is basically think tabletop version of Tron Cycles. And actually, nice. Yeah, I'm actually really excited to get that one. But yeah, so to your point, is they're always coming up with ideas. They're always like, they've always got like 6 ideas in the pipeline ready to go.
I have to note 2 things. First, this is another picture of one of my cats. So she's sitting in a loom. So anyhow, that's Faye. But I also have to say, it's funny you mentioned a tabletop version of Tron, because I actually did something like that in probably 2004 in the magazine Polyhedron, or at least it was Dungeon Magazine, but they had a little subsection of it they called Polyhedron that was basically each issue was like a little complete mini D20 system. And I did something called DeathNet that was entirely sort of a playing, people trapped in computer games. And you could play different kinds of programs and things like that. So I'm just saying I approve of the concept.
Yeah, when they came up with it, I was like, how is this not already a thing? And, it's really simple. It's literally like strips of cardboard in different shapes, that you put down on the table. It's a lot of fun. So there's a couple great questions. Is there anything in 2017 that you're looking forward to that's coming out?
That's not mine.
Yeah.
So I was about to say, I'm very excited about like the Scott Pilgrim game. I mean, that again has been something I've been working on for 3 years, and Illimat, I've been working on for a year. So I'm very excited about all of those. But let's see. Yeah, like I don't know, like going to Gen Con. Going to Gen Con is always okay, what's the new thing? I mean, it's trivial little things, but I'll just say I really like Card Kingdoms, Valeria, and I'm looking forward to the expansion to that should be coming out any of these days. I'm looking forward to Apocrypha from Lone Shark Games, which I did a little bit of writing for. I'm curious about Thorn Watch. Obviously, again, I've done, with Phoenix, I've done my own card-based role-playing game, but I'm curious to see Thorn Watch. I backed it. But beyond that, of course, hope springs eternal that eventually Wizards will do something with Eberron, whatever it is. So, because that's definitely something I would like to get back to writing.
Yeah, that was another question from Doug, and which after he asked it made me kind of curious as well, especially when you talk about Kickstarters, because my friends from Cardboard Fortress, I follow them on Kickstarter, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys do nothing but backboard games all day long. They play in our D&D group as well, and they're like, they're talking about they just got rid of like 50 games. They're like, do you guys want any of these? We have to. It's time to call the collection.
I understand, but you said there was a question?
No, that was actually part of an addendum to that question. Doug was asking about, about what you follow. But I actually do have a question. Who do you look up to when it comes to design?
Oh, a tremendous number of people. I will say I'm a huge fan of Robin Laws, who, worked on, he's done, so many things. Feng Shui is his, the Dying Earth role-playing game. He wrote some of my favorite material for Over the Edge. And so Robin Laws, thanks to genius. I loved Over the Edge, so Jonathan Tweet also is someone I respect a lot, and I actually had a chance to work with Jonathan on 13th Age. I did a little bit of work on at the very beginning of that. And to me, it's definitely just one of these things. When I go to Gen Con and I'm hanging out with people like Ken Hite and Robin Laws and stuff like that, there's still a part of me that is like, 22-year-old Keith being like, oh my God, these are the guys who make the games I'm playing. And, at this point, yeah, I've been doing this for decades and we're all on the same level, but I still have a lot of respect for those folks. I don't have the same reaction for board game designers, which is kind of odd. It's again, like, I think it's because with a role-playing game, you live in that whole world and you experience it on a deeper level. So, I mean, like Reiner Knizia, I'm like, oh yeah, he's a very prolific and clever game designer, but I'm not like, I've met him. I'm not like, oh my God, Reiner Knizia, oh, I can't believe it's you, sort of thing. And so, yeah, as I said, there's a lot of games I like, but even like Valeria, I'm like, oh, I can't even remember who made Valeria, even though I really like it as a game. Whereas with role playing, again, I'm like, oh, I love getting to meet John Harper. I'm like, oh, I love Lady Blackbird, So that's always exciting. But I will give Robin Laws, my personal favorite game designer, thumbs up.
Nice. Also, I feel like too, like with tabletop role-playing games, it's a little more niche. They have to, I think they have to work a little bit harder, fight a little harder to get somewheres, especially especially to go, be a professional and just do that for a living. It's like,
no, absolutely.
Talk to so many of those guys, and they still have day jobs, and and they're doing that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly with me, and it's frankly, again, if I wanted to make money, I'd be making computer games, and I probably could be. And every now and then I do a computer job just because, role-playing doesn't pay the bills. But I'm still, and it's funny, I went the other way. Of a lot of RPG designers, what you'll find is that they are now working in video games because it is just a better way to make a living. Whereas I went the other way. I started with video games and then left that to do role-playing. And mainly I'm lucky enough that I'm making enough that I can do it full-time. But, not a lot of people can.
Well, and that is interesting that you went the other way. Hey, guys, if you want to kick off the roll call before we get out of here, feel free. So what is one of your most rewarding experiences as a game designer thus far?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because Eberron is something that was an amazing experience for me, and I was really lucky to be a part of. But it was such a fluke that Wizards decided to do the fantasy setting search and ended up picking me, that it's not something I'm like is proud of in a way. I got really lucky. I ate a candy bar and it happened to have a golden ticket, if you know what I'm saying. So whereas something like Gloom is something where I had an idea, I prototyped it in my basement, and I got it out there, and now it's a big success. And so like that's something where personally I'm prouder of it. I'm more proud of it because I sort of made that from nothing. Whereas, Eberron only happened because of this big convergence of events. I am, all the things I'm doing now, all the things we've done is together. Phoenix, I think, is very sort of just innovative and different. It lets you tell stories that you just can't tell in any other role-playing game, because of the way we handle death and because the degree of player control. Illimat, which is, coming out later this year, is just, again, it's beautiful. It's the first game I've made I can play with my dad because, he gets sort of the classic. It is similar to a classic card game, and he gets that in a way he'd never play Gloom, or certainly a role-playing game. And I'm excited about Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim I've been working on for 3 years. So, all these things, a lot of things that I've been working on for a long time that are just coming out. But but yeah, and it's kind of cool again that just my wife and I, we've started our company and things are happening. We're getting stuff into the world. So I'm proud of that.
So I totally get the level of, rewarding as far as doing completely your own thing and the golden ticket thing. But then again, I've also, I also firmly believe in, luck is when preparation and opportunity meet, right? So you had to beat out a ton of people in order for that to happen. So it's not like
12,000.
Right. So it's not like they randomly picked one and said, let's go with this guy.
No. And I agree with that. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, they just picked a name out of a hat, because they definitely did not. So I'm proud of Eberron. I'm just saying that the point to me is I always like to look at it with time travel. There's a novel called Replay. Have you ever encountered it?
I have not.
Okay, so Replay, the premise is it's Groundhog Day on a massive scale. Essentially, you have a guy who's 40, he has a heart attack, and suddenly he wakes up and he's 18. And it's basically he's living his life again. And it's like, okay, so he makes different decisions, he does different things, he has a much better life, and then he gets to 40 and he dies and he wakes up and he's 18. And it's sort of looking at things. And part of what that is to me is there's all these moments in our lives that I can look back and say, oh, there's that one thing I really wish I'd done differently. But if I could do that differently, but that I then had to live forward my whole life again, what would I have to do to keep the things that I like about my life? And that's sort of my point of saying, I know if I just suddenly went back 20 years, I could make Gloom again. The question is, could I make Eberron and have it succeed? And the point is, I can make Eberron, but without Wizards deciding they want a new setting, I couldn't necessarily get it out there the way that it happens. That, basically, again, once they decided to do the setting search, then I'm like, okay, and then I kicked ass and all of that. But the fact that they decided to do the setting search at all was, a big convergence of stuff that I feel very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time. And just finishing off the Replay metaphor, the whole point to me is that's when I feel bad about things, whatever. I'm always like, okay, there's 3 or 4 things I wish I'd done differently, but there are hundreds of things that like really just totally worked out or went the right way, or I made the right decision. And when I start thinking about how much of a pain in the ass it would be to like have all those line up again, I'm like, no, okay, I'm doing okay. So.
But then also you get into the butterfly effect, right? Of, well, how much did that one thing really affect everything else, or vice versa? You just never know.
Oh no, and I've totally got one of those things of one moment that, as I said, is a situation I regret, that I'm just like, yeah, and if I had done this thing differently, I wouldn't have ended up meeting this person. I wouldn't have moved here. And it's only because I moved, the only reason I got into the computer game industry is because I moved to Washington, D.C. after college, because I didn't want to be in the computer game industry. I wanted to do role-playing games, but it just happened. I was there in DC. I was, working at a bookstore, and this opportunity came up with a local company. So I took that, because of that, that got me a lot of contacts, a lot of stuff. And so it's just this whole sort of, yeah, if it hadn't been for this, I wouldn't have moved to Washington. That wasn't part of my plan. I just did it because these things happened. And so it really is like, yeah, my entire life could have been completely different. And I'm very happy with how it is. I'm glad it all worked the way it did, but I am fascinated to know, like, what is that Keith doing? Like, I just want to see the movie,
Well, first of all, I think his name is actually Kevin.
It is, definitely.
I want to jump in the chat real quick. We got Doug from Cleveland. We've got Ghetto Stabulous in Louisiana. Chris Lynn in Houston. We've got Aloha from Honolulu from Joseph. We've got
Aloha.
Lincoln in Sweden. We've got Comic Book University, Hub City. Poison in Kuwait. We've got Brian F. in New York City. We got Ivan in Waterdeep. We have Patrick in Sweden. We've got Prue Prue in Denmark. We've got Andrew from Fandalen. We've got Leather Guru, the South. It's kind of broad. We've got Tom from Indiana. And Evil Silly Putties in Minnesota. We've got Agent 24416 in New Mexico. So we got people weighing in from all over the place, and we got a little bit of time left. So Doug wanted to know about, were you involved with the DDO game at all? Because it was set in Eberron.
So it's interesting. I wasn't involved that much, which I found very interesting because when it was being developed, not only am I obviously the foremost authority on Eberron, but I actually at that time had 8 years of experience designing MMORPGs. So I'm like, I get this, you know, really, I could totally be involved. You know, I could create this thing. And I really wasn't. I would say that in my opinion, when it was starting out, the team building it wasn't super excited about the fact that it was in Eberron. It was basically, that was sort of a condition of having the D&D license, is that Wizards was basically saying, well, you can have the D&D license, but it has to be our new thing. And I think they were mostly like Waterdeep fans, you know, or Forgotten Realms fans or stuff, and they were kind of cranky about it. I will say that then a couple years later, I went back and met with the team and worked on them. And by that point, the team was now made up of people who liked Eberron and were like, you know, there to do it. And I will say that while I wasn't directly involved, I had some conversations. Like, I definitely discussed 1 or 2 of the plot lines with them. And I really appreciated the fact that the people who were working there really did like care about the lore. And given, you know, that Wizards sort of put it back on the shelf, definitely I appreciate the fact that for a long time DDO was sort of keeping Eberron alive. And so, like I said, it wasn't something I was closely involved with. I think the closest I got to it was when I wrote the City of Stormreach book, the source book, because the whole point of that is we did say, well, let's try and make sure this lines up with what DDO has done. And it went both ways. You know, basically, we worked in the things that they had created, and I also presented a bunch of things that I'm like, well, you know, you might want to do this or that going forward in the game. What else we got?
I was just trying to, I was looking on my shelf to see if Stormreach was behind me or not, but then I remembered it is back at the Nerdarchy lair when we were doing our Eberron series. Which
no, I'm pretty happy with it as a book. You know, I mean, I think Stormreach is more limited than Sharn. You know, Sharn is certainly a more unique location, but I really like the Stormreach book. So.
Yeah, Sharn is actually, it's one of my favorite locations. I think to run like an urban adventure in, it's just an amazing setting. It's just got, you know, there's just so many layers to play with there. Yep. You know, pun kind of intended. But, yep. You know, the fact that you have a monster ghetto right in the city is one of my favorites. And then, you know, everything going on underneath the city. I've actually ran a couple 5th edition one-shots in Eberron that were all in Sharn, just because it's such a rich place to run an adventure.
Yeah, no, and certainly for me, I can easily, you know, if I have to throw a story together real quick, there's a million stories in Sharn I'd be happy to tell.
Absolutely. Quick question from Joseph. He wants to know what's another location you would consider doing a source book for in Eberron?
So the thing is, there's so many places that we have not developed, and you know, this is why I really hope that they'll open it up for the DMs Guild, because there's a lot of things that I know don't make economic sense for Wizards as a company to make, but I'd love to make. I'd love to do a book on the Plains, for example, because the Plains of Eberron are very undeveloped. In terms of single locations, I would very much be interested in Greywall, which is the border town on the edge of Droam and Brayland. And to me, I always say it's Casablanca, but with more ogres. And I wrote a 10,000 word piece for, I want to say it might have been, you know, the Gleemax, the online dragon. I can't remember, but somewhere for Wizards, I wrote a 10,000 word piece on Greywall that I really liked. And to me, it's just back to having a location that you can tell stories that you can't tell anywhere else. And so taking Droam as the city where it is a city of monsters. you know, and it's a city where humans are actually the minority and they've got their ghetto, you know, is such a sort of turning things on their head from the usual D&D picture. And so that's a location I would definitely love to explore, but really sort of any of the major cities, you know, Fairhaven and Ondair would be interesting to explore. Take a city in Karnath, and there's, you know, a lot of things you could dig into of just how Karnath differs, you know, something like the City of Night and Aether, or something like that, where you have a strong incorporation of undead, could definitely be interesting.
Yeah, Joseph said he was digging on the Grey Wall piece you did, and I'm pretty sure I read that too, but that would have been a few years ago. So earlier you said Eberron's been around for 14 years. That's it? It seems like longer.
13 technically, 14 because I was working on it for a year before it actually came out. So 2002, if I recall correctly, was the setting search. Then 2003 was working on it and came out in 2004. So yeah, 13 years.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking back to like when the search actually started, because I guess you know what, because that's where Eberron kind of started for me. I guess because we submitted our our own settings as well, and we were playing in our own games at the time, so it all kind of like blurs together.
No, absolutely. Some folks in Peru had a big 13th anniversary celebration for Eberron. I posted about it on my website, keith-baker.com.
The cake.
And they made like this amazing cake. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So.
Yes, I actually remember you sharing that. That's right. I guess it has only been that long, and because I had reshared it over on our Facebook page as well.
Yep.
And like I said, we not that long ago, so we did like a 10-part series on Eberron, why we think it should be in 5th edition, and I'm sure we got like tons of stuff wrong because we haven't really done as much with it because we just don't use too many campaign settings. We do mostly homebrew, but I
get it.
That is the only, I want to say that is the only campaign setting I've ever run. And
well,
so
I'm touched.
It definitely called to me, and there was enough interesting things in there. It's like we kind of no offense at Greenwood, but we kind of affectionately have nicknamed Forgotten Realms Forgettable Realms, and the only thing more generic than Forgotten Realms is probably Greyhawk. So I understand why they have to do it.
To me, something about Forgotten Realms is settings in the first place largely are there for people who just don't have the time to make an entirely new world, or who want to be able to easily, accessibly, sort of discuss it with other people. And looking to like Golarion or Forgotten Realms, I feel what drives them is ease of accessibility, and that both of them are these sort of patchworks of, okay, you want a place that's kind of like Egypt? It's right here. You want a place that's kind of like, Lord of the Rings? It's right here. And Eberron was definitely trying to be essentially not just the traditional standard fantasy. So I think, Forgotten Realms intentionally is very sort of Tolkien-esque, if you will. And with Eberron, it was trying to say, yeah, but, if you actually had elves, what if they were like this instead? And that kind of thing.
And that's why, like, our group has always been drawn to Eberron and Dark Sun and Ravenloft, things that are kind of like far removed from standard fantasy. I know what it is. I think it's most people, they just haven't figured out the secret to running your own campaign. And that is, don't make all the stuff. Like, we talk to people all the time. We get tons of questions on how to do stuff. And they want to like start off by building the world. And I'm like, nah, dude, you just need your town. Where are your people? Where are the adventurers hanging out? Why don't you just start with that tavern where they all meet and work out from there?
Yeah, that is certainly one of the things I talk to people about when people talk about world building, is exactly that of, well, you can start with the big picture if there's a reason to. What is it about this world that drives every story? But to me, my favorite approach is exactly that, is it's Deadwood. It's just come up with a town and just build from there. And, what makes it interesting, what's bringing adventure there, and expand it out as the players discover it.
Yeah, I don't know if I read it in a Dragon magazine or in a supplement I picked up, one of the world building supplements, or an interview or something. But I just remember the most profound thing that I took away was, hey, you just need this little piece where you guys are going to play at, and then build out from there.
Well, the thing about it is that it depends on the style of game you're doing. If you're going to have a globe-trotting Indiana Jones, we're seeing the sights of a world, then you got to think about it. But for me, I like things like, again, look to Twin Peaks or Deadwood or things like that, where you really get to know a particular place, going all the way back to like Thieves' World with Sanctuary, and that's what I like, is saying I can run a whole campaign in Sharn, and people don't even necessarily ever have to leave it. And so I really like getting that sense of depth, getting to know the inhabitants, getting to be involved with the town. So I enjoy that kind of thing.
As do I, and I think it involves your players so much much deeper into the game when they can keep going back to the same NPCs and they're building relationships and they care about this town as opposed to one they just kind of pass through, on their way to the other place.
Yeah, so actually the campaign I'm running right now, it's using a prompt that I've used in the past, but basically it's a bunch of people who were heading from Sharn to Stormreach and on an airship, and it's crashed, and it's actually crashed in Lamania, though they haven't figured that out yet. And basically they're stranded there, and it's this sort of, okay, so they're stranded in a shipwreck with, again, a handful of other survivors, and need to figure out how to get back to Eberron. But part of what's fun is, again, well, they're stuck in this place. They don't know how to get back. They're there with, 8, 9 NPCs, each who has their own sort of stories and secrets. And it's all about sort of getting to know these people and such as they are exploring the world around them. So I like that sort of long-term building up a background cast, as it were.
It's the Gilligan's Island edition of D&D.
Exactly. But although I'd say more lost in the degree of Gilligan's Island, every time they have an idea how to get back and it doesn't work. Here, they're still trying to figure out just any possibility of how do you get back.
So how many games are you playing in?
At the moment, I'm trying to think if I'm playing in any.
Playing or running?
Right. I have 2 different Phoenix campaigns going on at the moment, and I have 1 D&D campaign, so 3.
Cool.
I've had more in the past, but that's what I'm doing right now. And again, certainly I was in a 5e campaign for a little bit, but just time got in the way. And a friend of mine, Teos, is seeing if he's putting together a Tomb of Annihilation event, and I may play in that, but I don't have a lot of time. So, especially because I'm about to hit my road tour.
Well, that'll do it too. 3 games is still a lot, even for a game designer.
Well, again, with the Phoenix games, it's because I'm working on a new adventure path for Phoenix, and so I've got to play it. So that's work. And the D&D one is just for fun.
That's what I keep telling my wife. It's just work. So I feel like I perpetuated one of the greatest scams of all times. But with that, we're a little past the hour mark. I want to thank you for coming on again. Action Cats, go check it out. The link is in the description, guys, as always. You're part of our 2-timers club, so hopefully we'll be able to make that a 3-time sometime in the future.
Excellent.
So
thanks so much for having me, and thanks for chatting. I've had a good time.
All right, everybody. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Bye.